Juan de Fuca is a ticking time bomb beneath the ocean. And by the looks of it, this bomb is about to explode. Scientists have measured an alarming increase in earthquake activity around this underwater volcano. Is another eruption imminent? What is its supervolcanic history? And why do scientists believe that this volcano could destroy the world? This is the Juan de Fuca, the ocean's ticking time bomb. The Juan de Fuca is an oceanic plateau which hosts a large magma chamber below the seabed. This massive blob of molten rock is so big that if it were to erupt, it would dump hundreds of thousands of cubic kilometers of ash, pumice, and lava onto the North American continent. But even if it doesn't erupt anytime soon, the mere movement of this magma can cause some serious damage. The reality is that we are living on borrowed time. The pressure from the magma chamber has already caused the seabed to bulge up 500 meters. If the magma finds a weak spot and pushes its way through, a volcanic eruption will obliterate everything in its path. But what's driving this huge magma chamber? Let's start at the beginning. Located off the west coast of Canada and the United States, the Juan de Fuca is technically a microplate, a small segment of the Earth's crust that behaves like a single tectonic plate. The microplate is surrounded by three major plates, the North American, Pacific, and Philippine sea plates. These three plates meet at what's known as a subduction zone where the denser oceanic crust is forced under the less dense continental crust. As it descends into the planet, the intense heat and pressure hundreds of kilometers below the surface cause the water trapped in the rocks to turn into magma. Magma is molten rock found beneath the Earth's surface. When it reaches the surface, it's called lava. But there's a problem here. The Juan de Fuca plate is also sinking into the Earth, meaning that the magma isn't able to pile up. Instead, the magma chamber is being squeezed into a narrow space between the Juan de Fuca and North American plates. As a result, the seabed above the magma chamber has risen 500 meters. In fact, the entire region is one of the most seismically active areas on the planet with over 2,000 earthquakes recorded each year. This is because the magma chamber is pressing against the seabed, creating enormous stress. When the stress exceeds the strength of the rocks, they break, releasing energy in the form of an earthquake. But these earthquakes aren't just confined to the ocean floor. They often radiate outward, shaking the west coast all the way from Northern California to British Columbia. In fact, many people living in coastal towns don't even feel these quakes because they're so used to them. A good example is the 7.3 magnitude quake that struck just off the coast of Cape Mendocino, California in 1992. Most locals reported not feeling anything at all. Although the Juan de Fuca has been relatively quiet for the past 10,000 years, it has a long history of violent eruptions. It began forming around 40 million years ago when the Farallon Islands microplate subducted beneath the North American plate. The descending plate melted, creating magma which formed the Juan de Fuca. Over the next 10 million years, the magma chamber grew larger and larger until finally it erupted. This first eruption was so massive that it's estimated that over 1,600 cubic kilometers of material was ejected. To put this number into perspective, the 1980 Mount Helens eruption in Washington state released about 1.5 cubic kilometers of material. So, the Juan de Fuca's first eruption was about 1,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens. The debris from the eruption formed a thick layer of ash and pumice which covered much of the North American continent. This eruption had global implications, blocking out the sun and causing global cooling. And it didn't stop there. For the next several million years, the Juan de Fuca continued to erupt over and over again. Each eruption was so massive that geologists refer to it as a supervolcano. In total, more than 10,000 cubic kilometers of material was ejected during these eruptions. So why do scientists believe that the Juan de Fuca could destroy the world? The answer lies in the size of its magma chamber. It's so large that if it were to erupt, it would be catastrophic. In fact, researchers believe that the magma chamber is capable of producing the largest volcanic eruption in history. But how big are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at the largest volcanic eruption in recent history, the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. This eruption released about 50 cubic kilometers of material. Now, let's compare this to the 10,000 cubic kilometers of material ejected by the Juan de Fuca over the past few million years. That's 200 times more material. And it gets even worse. Estimates suggest that the entire magma chamber could be emptied in a single eruption, which means that the Juan de Fuca could produce an eruption 400 times larger than Mount Tambora. And don't think that we'd be safe just because we're on land. Ash and pumice would cover much of western North America, but the winds would carry fine particles all the way around the globe. In fact, global fallout would block out the sun, leading to global cooling. And this is just the direct effects of the eruption. In the aftermath, there would be widespread crop failure and famine, as well as the collapse of society as we know it. But could such an eruption really happen? There are some worrying signs. First of all, the earthquake activity around the Juan de Fuca has increased dramatically over the past few decades. Many scientists believe that this is due to the magma chamber pushing against the seabed. The more it rises, the more pressure it puts on the surrounding rocks, causing them to fracture and release energy in the form of earthquakes. Secondly, the seabed itself is bulging upwards, creating a dome-like structure. This is also evidence of the magma chamber forcing its way up towards the surface. But perhaps the most worrying sign is the increase in volcanic activity along the Ring of Fire. In the past few years, volcanoes that have been quiet for centuries have suddenly become active. For example, the 2021 eruption of the La Palma volcano in Spain was the first eruption in 50 years. It released over 100 million cubic meters of lava, which destroyed over 2,600 buildings. And then there's Mount Vesuvius in Italy, the volcano that destroyed the Roman city of Pompeii in 79 AD. In 2020, scientists detected an increase in seismic activity and, even more worryingly, an increase in gas emissions. Could this be a sign that Mount Vesuvius is about to blow? Only time will tell. So the question remains, could the Juan de Fuca blow? Well, there is some good news and bad news. The good news is that the magma chamber is not currently at risk of erupting. The bad news is that no one can predict when or if it will erupt in the future. In fact, some scientists believe that it could erupt at any time. One thing is for sure, however, the Juan de Fuca is a ticking time bomb. And when it eventually blows, it will change the world forever. But what can we do to prepare? Well, the first step is to educate ourselves about the risks. Most people don't realize that such a disaster is even possible, let alone imminent. Secondly, we need to develop early warning systems so that we can evacuate coastal towns in the event of an eruption. Finally, we need to invest in research so that we can better understand the volcano and its history. By taking these steps, we can minimize the damage and hopefully save lives. In the end, however, there's only so much we can do. The Juan de Fuca is a force of nature, and when it erupts, it will be catastrophic. But that day is not yet here. And in the meantime, we can enjoy the stunning beauty of the Pacific Northwest. From the lush rainforests of Vancouver Island to the rugged coastline of Oregon, this is truly one of the most spectacular regions on Earth. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please leave a comment below with your ideas for future videos.